I'm about to say something that might make some people uncomfortable. That is, learning doesn't have to come from an institution. I know what you're thinking. Here she goes, trashing universities. Well, hear me out, bear with me. I'm not saying school is useless. It's one way to learn, but it's not the only way. Learning doesn't have to be handed to you by someone with a degree. It can be self-directed, self-paced, self-designed. This week, we're gonna talk about this book, A Student's Guide to Open Learning by Moya Davis. It's a small book, just 76 pages, but it completely articulated something I've been living for years. I realized my whole life is a case study, so I want to share that with you. The author makes a beautiful distinction: open learning versus closed learning. Openness and closure are two opposite ends of a path. Closed learning is the factory model, the more familiar model. It's what most of us experience in school. You sit in a room, someone tells you what to memorize, you repeat it back, you get a grade, you move on. Children are grouped by age and forced through grades at the same pace, regardless of their individual aptitude or interests. Everyone goes through from like 5th grade to 6th grade to 7th grade, like it's an assembly line. Students get treated as products to be processed in a factory, but people are not objects on an assembly line. That system was designed for a different era, the industrial era. It was built to produce workers, people who could follow instructions and carry out specific tasks. Open learning, on the other hand, is different. It puts you in control. An open philosophy of education aims to remove as many barriers to learning as possible, opening up opportunities for learning. This means that it concentrates on your needs as a student rather than the needs of your employers or of society in general. You are at the center of the educational process and in control of it, instead of being on the receiving end of what others feel should be provided. Open education is learner-centered. An open philosophy of learning allows you to study what you wish, where, when, and how you wish. Closed learning has an edge. It has limits. It says, here's the curriculum, here are the outcomes, learn this, pass that. Open learning says, what do you need to understand? What experience do you already bring? What would be useful to you? I didn't realize it at the time, but that's exactly what I was doing. The year COVID happened was the year I graduated high school. I was supposed to go to university in 2020, but like everyone else, I ended up stuck at home. COVID was devastating in so many ways, but something shifted in education. Universities everywhere started putting their materials available online, and sometimes they made them open, free for everyone to access. I was in Iran. I normally couldn't access Ivy League lectures or workshops from tech giants like Google or Microsoft, but suddenly I could. I took over 200 online courses. Nobody assigned me any of it. No institution, no employer, nobody. For the first time, I could choose. Every single course I took, I chose it myself. I chose every single one based on what I wanted to understand, not what someone else told me to learn. I was lucky. I grew up in a family that never pushed me toward one specific career. No pressure to be a doctor or engineer, the typical path for many kids in Asian families. Instead, they handed me a library card and trusted me to find my own way. And I'm so grateful for that. They gave me absolute freedom to explore whatever I wanted. Computer science, business, languages, philosophy, everything I could get my hands on. I even taught myself English, and clearly it worked out because here I am talking to you. I think that kind of freedom gives you a broader perspective, a much wider worldview than a narrow prescribed education ever could. Because you're not passively receiving information, you're not sitting around waiting for someone to tell you what to learn. You're actively seeking it out, figuring it out yourself. If you put your entire trust in a closed learning system, you are at risk. You are at the mercy of whoever designed that system. You have to ask yourself, who are the people presenting the knowledge, ideas, or arguments? Are they credible? Are their claims to knowledge supported by sound academic references? Are their arguments logical, rational, and unbiased? There's always a chance that a closed system has flaws, sometimes serious ones, but when you engage with open learning, you expose yourself to diverse sources, to multiple perspectives. The chances of being misled are much smaller. Let me give you an example. In Iran, where I went to high school, textbooks were heavily biased. They were carefully revised to align with state ideology, very self-centered around the Islamic regime. They didn't have much room for other perspectives. Learning about other cultures, languages, or lifestyles was actively discouraged. They were treated as irrelevant, even dangerous. I remember school never quite felt like enough for me. They filled my entire day, consumed my hours, but provided very little actual value. I would sit through class after class and come home feeling like I haven't learned anything meaningful. So I started waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. to carve out time for myself, for independent study, to read the books they weren't giving us, to learn what school wasn't teaching me. I didn't know I was doing open learning, I just knew I needed more. Traditional education often puts students in the passenger seat, like a bus. They drive you wherever they want. Someone else decides the route. You just sit there. You have zero control over what you're taught. But with open learning, you are in the driving seat. You choose the direction and destination. You can select courses, mix and match modules, and build a curriculum that actually fits your needs. You can spend more time on subjects that interest you and less on areas you're already familiar with. I often think about how different my life would have been without open learning, without online courses from other countries, without ebooks in different languages, without strangers sharing ideas across the internet. Most of what I know came from people who will never know my name. And maybe that's the real beauty of open learning. Knowledge becomes a gift passed between strangers. Now, let me give you some data because this isn't just philosophy. There's real evidence behind why open learning works. There's a field called andragogy, basically the science of how adults learn, started by a guy named Malcolm Noel back in the 70s. And his big finding was this: adults don't learn the way kids do. We need to understand why something matters. We need it tied to real experience. We need some control over the process. And think about that. The conditions for adult learning are basically the definition of open learning. There's also this idea called experiential learning, which Davis brings up in the book. The idea that we don't just absorb information out of nowhere, we make sense of it through experience. We connect new ideas to what we already know, which means any system that ignores your existing knowledge and starts from zero is, by definition, inefficient. And here's the part I think about a lot. Self-directed learners consistently outperform passive learners in long-term retention and application. Not in short-term test scores necessarily, but in actually using what they learned. And isn't that the point? Not to pass a test, to actually know something. The research is clear. When you have ownership over your learning, you retain more, apply more, and grow more. I want to end with a challenge. Ask yourself, in the last year, how many things did you learn because someone required you to? And how many did you learn because you genuinely wanted to understand them? If the ratio is mostly the first category, I would argue you haven't been learning. You've been complying. And compliance is fine for certain things, but it's not real learning. As the book I mentioned puts it, to move forward towards growth as individuals, we need to let go of the security of the person we think we are and continually question ourselves, our surroundings, and the societies and organizations in which we live and work. And that brings me to the final thought I want to leave you with. You're not a tree. You're not stuck in one place. It can be like a river. Keep moving. I believe in the free flow of people, of information, of ideas, and I think that can change the world in ways we can't even imagine yet. The more you change your environment, the more you surround yourself with different people, the more you expose yourself to unfamiliar ideas, the more you grow. And that's what open learning is. It's a lifelong process. I don't know where your journey will take you, but I know this. The direction is yours to choose. You are in charge.